Ay, fue madre. All right, muy buenas tardes a todos. Muchas gracias por acompañarnos en otro Conversando con CISOs. Mi nombre es Edgar Rojas desde Estados Unidos y allá en Bogotá, nuestro amigo Andrés Almanza. Se ve que está frito allá en Bogotá, Andrés.
Sí, es correcto. Hoy está haciendo una tarde como de mucho frío. Entonces, esa es la razón por la que tengo la ruanita.
Y tenemos un invitado especial. En un minuto le damos la bienvenida a Mike Kiser desde Austin, Texas. Mike nos acompañó, algunos de ustedes que nos acompañaron en el primer CISOs Latam Summit en Cartagena. Mike estuvo con nosotros hace un par de años y aquí trabajando con él a ver si nos acompaña en el CISO Latam Summit de este año, que ojalá podamos hacerlo en octubre.
Ojalá.
En Santa Marta. Va a estar muy bueno el lugar. La invitación es a todos para el 28 y 29 de julio. Tenemos el nuevo evento enfocado en inteligencia artificial. Ya es oficial, Andrés, tenemos oficial BlackBerry, ese diamante.
Wow.
Y nos va a acompañar. Tenemos un par de personas muy interesantes que van a hablar acerca de temas muy interesantes acerca de inteligencia artificial. Así que la invitación es a que nos acompañen. Okay, so we switch to English. Mike.
Lo siento, pero es más fácil y, you'll understand a lot more of what I say and I can argue better. I can be loud in Spanish, totally. But I can argue much better in English. So.
Perfect. Vamos a conversar acerca de identidad, que fue el tema que maneja Mike. Es muy conocido a nivel global por su expertise en el tema de identidad. Él trabaja con SailPoint, la oficina del CTO de SailPoint, y él estuvo en RSA hace un par de semanas dando una charla y me causó curiosidad y quería hablar con él acerca de este tema de identidad que él maneja muy bien. Entonces, comenzamos. Mike, thank you so much for being with us as always. It's a pleasure to host you and learn from you, man. This is like, hopefully you have a nice cold brewski there. I got my aguardiente.
Perfecto.
And let's go ahead and talk about identity. What was your presentation at RSA all about?
Sure. It was covering like the last year in identity, but specifically strong biometric authentication, and even more specifically, facial recognition.
Facial recognition.
There has been a lot of controversy in the past year or two because people are starting to realize that facial recognition has some issues. And so the combination of a woman named Joy Bulamwini discovering that facial recognition systems only work for white old dudes like myself.
Yeah.
That's a first problem, right?
But let's stop you right there. It depends on the algorithm, right? Let me share the screen with everyone here. Because you shared that with me, so I have it here and I want to share it, right?
Sure.
So this is the NIST study, right, on the algorithms. Yep. Notice the date, December 19, 2019, so it's almost 2 years old. And the study, you guys can go ahead and read this. It's pretty good. It's 2-minute read.
This is not the only publication that,
no. But this is the one
about this.
No, but this is the one.
MIT have a lot of investigation, have a lot about this kind of issue that is very racism, age, whatever, because the algorithms have a problem with this.
But
bias.
But the thing that I was interested in is that by reading this thing, and Mike, you can correct me if this has been fixed or not, that this was referring to AI algorithms in the States that have a lot of that bias. AI algorithms developed in Asian countries do not have that bias.
Yes.
It's really going to depend on how they built the system, right?
Exactly.
So the problem was, and this MIT researcher, as Andres was pointing out, started it in 2018, right? She did research. It couldn't even see her face. It couldn't recognize that she had a face because of her skin color. all right?
Yeah.
Until she literally put on a white mask, like a dramatic, Shakespeare kind of thing. And then it showed up instantly. And she's like, what in the world is going on? There's a Netflix show called Coded Bias that takes you through a lot of this as well. And it depends on which algorithm we're talking about, right? Because what data you train it on means it's good or bad at predicting that type of data, right? So the big ones, Face++, Amazon Service, IBM, Microsoft, they all originally had problems because most of the facial databases that you use to train these models on are largely white men. That's what it was, right? And no one realized, oh crap, we can't do that. And so her research kind of broke it out, and then the U.S. government did research as well. And so that's part of what all this research is about, is trying to fix these bias issues, because they have huge societal impact.
It's huge. And I personally have dealt with that, being a Colombian male, right, in my 50s, coming back to the U.S. from Colombia or from Brazil through Miami, where you have the kiosk, the self, entry. Stand here, put your passport, look at the camera, and then they do a one-on-one, and then they check you against the database, and then they put a freaking big X in your face if you have to go and see somebody else, right?
Right.
Guess how many times I got the big freaking X on my face? 100%. Yes. Every single time I get, and I'm like, there's something wrong.
And we're assuming you've done nothing, that
of course I've done all I've been doing was
police.
hosting CISO events. I mean, that's all
right.
I do.
This is the point, right? The bias doesn't matter until someone uses it for something that's important.
Yeah.
Like it's being stopped at a border, right?
So that goes back to what we've been hearing in the past about AI and machine learning. It's only as good as the data that you feed it.
The data you feed it and the assumptions you build in, maybe without even knowing it, right? So it's a combination, right, of accuracy and, I would say, misuse, or poor use.
Okay.
So because in the past year, past 2 years, what's really been revealed in the New York Times and other places is that there are companies like Clearview AI, which are going out and they are skimming social media sites, so Facebook and Instagram, whatever else, and they're collecting all the pictures you've uploaded that you maybe didn't lock down, the ones you thought were going to your familia and your friends and all that kind of stuff, right? Now they're taking it and they're building a database of your face, of your selfies, and then they're selling it to law enforcement or other enforcement agencies.
Yeah.
Wow. So again, in the States, it's a particular problem because when they sell it to law enforcement agencies, the way they use this is not a one-to-one match. It's not, here's a picture of someone robbing a jewelry store. Does this match Mike? Oh, it does. Yeah. That's not the process. The process is they'll take a still image of me robbing, or potentially me, hopefully not me, robbing a jewelry store, right? And then they'll run it through their database and they'll generate a list of top 25, top 50, top 100 matches. Doesn't mean it matched. It just means these are the best matches. And then they hand that to the police. But so, go ahead. Sorry, Andres, go ahead.
No, that I said, but this match is a characteristic or match is the image of whatever person. Because the idea is you compare with the total image, or even the eyes is similar, your nose is similar, and do like a checklist.
Es complicado. Es complicado.
Yes.
Because it's dependent. What's happening is it takes the image and then it's been trained to recognize faces, right? But the models don't tell these systems how to recognize faces. They have learned it on their own. So who knows? No one really can tell you why it's similar. Now there are scientific, there's ways you can determine it, right? But it's the whole face.
But let me stop you there, Mike, because this is something that scares the crap out of me, and that I've read just early this week, and it's exactly that. There was a study, I think it was in Europe or somewhere, where they interviewed, I don't know, 1,000 AI programmers or AI designers, and none of them could tell you with exactitude what does their AI program do, because you just said it. We don't know how they learn, but they're learning stuff. That is scary.
Right. I mean, they're not telling it how to do it. They're saying, look, here is your input and here's your output that matches. These two match, you figure out why they match. And it's very similar to the way the humans do it as well. And it's all based off of human learning, right? When you have a 2-year-old, you don't say this is a spoon. Well, you do, but you do it like 3 times and the kid realizes this is a cuchara, right? So they don't have to, think about it. Yeah. How did they know it's a spoon? They couldn't tell you. Who knows? They just know. And so it's a lot of it is based off of how humans physically work and the brain works, which is fascinating. But yeah, you get into trouble when you can't explain it. There's a whole field of AI ethics about transparency and explainability that talks about, if you can't explain it, you can't fight back, right?
Exactly. And that's what scared me. It's like, whoa. We don't know what the program is doing, but we're still using it for something that is extremely important, that is identifying who you are. And it's not it's not, and when they identify you, it's not from a good perspective, is to identify if you're dangerous or not. Negative connotation to begin with.
There was a call to entirely stop using this technology last June from ACM and some other organizations. And I want to differentiate too, to be careful, that facial recognition or machine learning, it's an innovation. It's a technology. It doesn't mean it's automatically, from Satan or whatever, right? It's not inherently evil, right?
Yes.
It depends on how it's used and how it's misused.
Well,
so
it's the
Face
same
ID
thing
on my phone, I love it, right? Yeah. But it's not going anywhere. It's in a secure enclave on my phone,
right?
In
a secure enclave, which we think is secure.
Right.
Okay, that's another conversation. So,
they tell you.
But that brings us to a question that I wanted to ask you, and it has to do with security and privacy, right? So this is the one, and I don't want to hear bullshit. I want to hear exactly what you think, because you're the expert. And I want to understand, how your brain works and this, how you see it. When we were all studying for the CISSP, or some of us are studying for the CISSP, we all talk about authentication, right? And biometrics. My eyeball, my iris, my thumbprint, all that stuff. And we're like, this is authentication, part of security. Well, now we're saying, our face is our identity, and we use that security to unlock our phones, right? Security. And now it's face recognition plus privacy. It's the big combination. What happened to face recognition and security? That wasn't sexy enough? Marketing getting in the way and saying, hey, privacy is the new, next generation security. What's going on there?
I mean, how did privacy enter into the conversation?
Yes, and why we don't hear any more about facial recognition and security, but it's facial recognition and privacy. So at some point, that message got turned, and now it's all about privacy. Why? When did it change? Why did it change? Is it?
My personal opinion is that people woke up.
Okay.
Like, you think about, 2005 or something, your whole life's on Facebook, relationship changes. You put it out there. Oh, now I'm dating, now I'm single, now I have 5 kids. I mean, for years and years and years, you can just find anything out you want about someone. And people are realizing the trade that they've made. And so I think there is a reality there where people want privacy, right? And they're waking up to it in terms of, I don't have to explain to my friends, hey, do you want me to just hand your data to advertisers and other people who could do you harm? Or would you rather be anonymous? They're like, no, I want to be anonymous. I don't want anyone to know. They don't see the value in like targeted ads. They're creeped out by it rather than saying this is helpful, right? And so I think that especially I think the next generation is catching on to it, and they're saying, no, this is a core value. And so I think you get companies that are starting to definitely market it. Look at all the Apple ads, right? What happens on iPhone stays on iPhone. Is it true or not? It doesn't matter because they're selling it.
But they connect my value now, that is privacy, with your opportunity to do business. Dave, for example, and they is an example that is possible to take care of privacy. Take care is possible now. Take care.
That's where I was getting at, right? It's a marketing that getting then created this need and scaring the masses and selling their solutions and the products in the future.
I think it depends on what we're talking about. So for example, think of something like Strava, where you wear a fitness device and then you measure it and you upload it. People loved it, and I love it. I've got a Garmin device too, right? I love data. I love saying, oh, I'm faster today, or I'm way slower today than I was 10 years ago. That's probably more likely. But they realized that with that data, that's usually just open because I want everyone to be able to see it. Everyone can track me, right? If I'm a woman who's being stalked by someone, well, then I know where you are at all times. I know where you live. I know when you usually run and what your path is. On a larger level, they found military bases that had the heat map, and they could map out the entire U.S. military base because all these U.S. armed forces had, tracking devices on. So it's a trade-off. And what's most interesting is there are movements afoot to let people sell their data.
I read that. I thought that was very interesting. Put a value on your data. You want to use my data? Pay me for it. What do you think?
I think it is a horrible idea. Horrible idea. Like your data value as just one person is like $1.50 or something. And once you sell it, how do you keep it from being? There are just so many issues. I feel like it's an easy way out.
Yeah.
Right. And the privacy thing is becoming more and more real, not just marketing, because it's also affecting things like session cookies in your browser. Not to get too technical, but that will break some of your single sign-on. So you know how you cookies and tracking and all that?
Yeah.
The browsers are now moving to block third-party cookies.
Right.
Which means a lot of your single sign-on between sites is going to break unless they re-implement. And I'm part of working groups that are trying to think through how to do that right now. And so, yeah, I think it's beyond the realm of just marketing at this point.
Okay. Wow.
But what would you trade? What would you trade for your data?
I don't know. No. I mean, I think at this point the genie is out of the bottle, right? I mean, how many times, our age group, we've been posting photos of ourselves and our children, right? And now our children are grown up and they realize that a lot of their life is up there on the internet, and they never authorized their information to be out there. So as you're saying, this new generation is coming out. They're very focused on their privacy and and stuff like that. But yet again, everything is already out there. A lot of that basic information, what makes them individuals, is out there. This is a huge issue, Mike. Huge issue. Right now in the States, what is this whole thing with Amazon Sidewalk? Is it Sidewalk? That's what it's called, right?
Yeah, Amazon Sidewalk. Yeah.
So for those of you that are not aware, in Latin America, so Amazon has the Ring doorbell. In Latin America, Andres, they have Ring doorbells where it's basically a doorbell with a little camera, and it starts to automatically record as soon as anybody comes in front of the door. So they do that here for security.
Yes.
Right. Right. And so people install it, and all the data gets automatically photos and then videos lately, right? And it gets uploaded automatically. Guess where? Amazon Cloud, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So now Amazon has all the freaking data. And what they started doing is what Mike is saying. They started to sell that data to a lot of police organizations, stuff. I didn't authorize them to sell my data. So why is Amazon making money out of my data? And that's a big issue with the privacy, because of all the issue that is going right now with Black Lives Matter and everyone against the police, and thinking that the police are going to use this information for bad and not for good. Did I say that correct? Or
yeah, I mean, and even if they're not, even if they're using it for good, or they think they're using it for good. If someone shoots someone in the head in the middle of the street, I want that person arrested. Yes. And I want justice carried out, right? Yes. But I also want to make sure it's the right person. And if it's not accurate, I have a friend who is a journalist who covers crime stories. And there are a couple of techniques in criminal justice that are no longer allowed. Like horrific things like blood splatter, like the patterns of how blood splatters when you kill someone.
That was perfect with Dexter, right? Dexter was famous for that, right?
It's not admissible, and you can't use it in court anymore because it's not accurate enough, for instance. Okay. And so this, it's going to go down kind of the same path, I would assume. So
this is scary because we go back to the beginning of the conversation with the AIs, with the woman that it wouldn't recognize her face because she was Black until she put the white face, and now it recognized her, right? So the excuse that they do in the States is like, well, it's always going to identify a African-American, a Black person, because, statistically, that's the group that commits the most crimes. And that's usually their answer to why AI always finds that it's Black. But if you go to the root of the problem, the AI solution being used is not ready. It's not mature enough to identify. That's what I'm hearing, right? It's not mature enough. So why are we using it as a way to identify, in this case, criminals? It just doesn't make any sense. There's going to be too many false positives. Colombia, we're very famous. We know everything about false positives down there. But this is very dangerous.
Yeah. And it's supposed to generate, again, it's misuse, right? The sellers of the solution would claim, no, we are not saying this person is guilty. We are saying this person should be investigated. This person is a suspect.
Yes.
Pero if you're, then what happens is law enforcement or other groups misuse it. right? If I'm being handed a list of 10 people, I'll just go arrest them all and then
see what happens.
Sort them out later. Or it's so part of it's misuse, part of it's the inaccuracy, part of it's systemic. Even if you train the model right, there are biases in the system, like you said, that are like, well, am I going to pick up the black guy or the white guy? Well, so it's really hard to separate. It's almost like a great social experiment in a tragic way, because the technology is just reflecting the inherent systemic bias that's in society.
Right. And that's usually what all the tests with all the AIs, the Google experiments, the Microsoft experiments with smart AI, how quickly they had to turn it off because it turned very racist, extremely vile racist.
Right. And so there's a whole branch of research, not only for ethics, but for trying to improve the accuracy of these systems by breaking them, right? And then there's a newer branch, which is trying to help people evade some of these systems.
That was the basis of your presentation. Yeah, tell us about that one.
Right.
RSA.
So the last year or so, what researchers, academics have done, I'm not an academic, is they've tried to figure out enough about how these proprietary facial recognition systems work so they can mess with them. They take a couple of different tactics. Like one is they will take your photo and they'll inject noise into the image that you can't quite see, but it alters it enough that the system has trouble detecting faces.
Right. So you showed us an example. You had a photo of you, a nice photo. Yeah. And then you added some stuff, and then it thought that you were some kind of turtle.
Right. And when you turn it way up, it can't find you at all. Right. Exactly. And then the others take a lot more computer power and memory and these kinds of things. But what they do is they use machine learning techniques to slightly alter, and I won't go into the technical details, but they use machine learning against machine learning. And sometimes they work well, sometimes they don't. So I could show you pictures where, because the goal always with any of this is to fool or defeat the facial recognition software, but yet have it still look like something you would show your mother. Right? That it wouldn't scare her, because when you do this at a low level, it looks basically like me or you. When you turn up the protection or the concealment, it looks like someone took a lead pipe and just beat me about the face.
Right. You become a Picasso, yeah.
Yeah. It's like, no, it's not you. So, and it takes a lot of processing power. So it's an interesting area. Again, but it's also academic. And so it's hard to say, go ahead.
So, and I had a question because I wanted to ask you on that one. So when I watched you, that RSA thing,
yeah,
I'm trying to think what was the reason? Why was the reason for you to show that? Is to show that it can be defeated, that the system can be defeated?
What you do is if you were to take your photos and alter them in this way, and then put them up on social media, release them into the wild, right? What happens is the systems and what they think you look like is slowly altered over time. Just like using only white people means your facial recognition system is going to suck when it comes to Black people or Colombians coming back to the States. The same technique you're using against it. You're saying, look, this is what Mike looks like. And it looks kind of like me, but it's enough different that it won't actually recognize me when my real photo is used. Yeah. Which means if I'm walking through a public space and there's a TV a camera that is recording, it means it won't necessarily tie it back to me because I will have polluted that training data. It's a long process, but that's the general idea.
Someone, Christian Camilo Urcuki. Urcuki Lopez. Thank you. Gracias, Christian. He says, nowadays, we have some mechanisms to face the unfairness of machine learning models. Nevertheless, some projects that are new and do not know all the implications of data and AI, they do not pay attention to responsible AI until something happens, like an incident in cybersecurity. That is the same thing in the industry, that we keep committing the same mistake over and over again. IoT, by default, not secure, and now look at the mess we're in. AI is about, it's doing the same thing. I mean, this is a good discussion for the Congress, the AI event that I'm putting together. But what do we do in that case? I mean, regulation. What? I mean, what?
Regulation is part of. Well, I don't know. What do you think on this?
I say that all the time we try to resolve our problem with regulation, but regulation is a problem because it's a constraint that create a, how do you say, problem with innovation, for example. And if you say, now what? I take care of regulation or I take care of innovation. It's not that I say one of one, that you put in a trouble with all of them and you try to
balance it.
Christian say, until something happens. And I say, okay, I'm going to innovation and until whatever happened, and I put attention to regulation. And this is a way. And many enterprises do that, or not, Mike?
There's a whole field of trying to reduce bias in AI and ML. I think you're right. I think both are true. I think that they're getting a handle on it where they realize, oh, personal data like GDPR, I think it's been fairly effective in terms of at least pushing people to try. Right now, are they effective at it or not? I don't know, but at least they don't want to be in the headlines and they don't want to face fines. I think that there's a responsibility that people don't feel, right? I want this, oh, this is a cool idea, let me do it. Well, why are we doing it? Well, because we can. Well, should we? Well, who cares? Yeah. Right? So to your point, I think there's a move towards, understanding it. And part of it is marketing, right? Part of it is journalists reporting and saying, look at this evil that you didn't know about. Mm-hmm. You're being screwed over by this large corporation or this government, whatever else. You need to be aware of it. I don't know. I don't know if there's a set answer.
Yeah, there's no easy way.
It's not easy to answer this. It's of course that no, because you put in the middle ethics and responsibility. This is depends on many things.
But let's go to another topic, another part of the whole thing that we discussed in this program with one of our guests, and it's about the social, right? Society, your culture, right? Yeah. And remember that conversation, Andres, when we said what is important security in Colombia is maybe not important security in
another
Iran,
country,
right? Or in China or in Russia, right? It depends on the culture bias. So is that, and then again, reading that NIST report, to me, that's what jumps, right? The almost 100% of AI in facial recognition AI that's in the States, it's racist, where almost none of it in Asian AI has the same issues. So I'm like, culture.
It's culture, and the trade-off is cultural as well. In other words, in I would say a country or a place that's more collective-minded, in other words, but for society, then you're more willing to give up what you think of as your rights because it benefits the group.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. COVID is a great example of it, right? Like, why am I going to get a vaccination if I'm 20 years old? Not because I'm going to die, but because I want to benefit mi país,
All the
mi
group,
pueblo,
yeah.
mi whatever, right?
Yeah.
The same applies to potentially, and this is controversial, but it's fun, is a pasaporte de COVID, right? Like,
Yes,
do
totally
I
agree
have,
with you.
do I have to show that? No. Is it a requirement? Should it be a requirement for entry? I think so, personally. Pero what's interesting, you look at the Eurozone just said that they're releasing, digital passports for COVID, for instance.
Right.
One of the requirements, though, is that they don't store anything ever. So what happens is you get a QR code on your phone and you show it, and at the point of entry, it scans the code, calls back and checks for cryptographic signing from the hospital or the doctor or whatever the authority was, and gets a yes or no, but never saves any of your information.
Yes, nothing else.
So there are
else.
ways to do it. It's just complicated.
And I know that in the group that we're in, we discussed something like that a while ago when I sent you some link about these passports that were coming up. And there was a nice lively discussion if it's a good idea or not a bad idea. And you were talking about exactly this thing. There's ways of doing it, and there's interesting things.
And it's going to be more and more like that. They just also announced a digital wallet for Europe that's going to come in the next 2 years.
Okay.
So anything about your identity, you're going to be able to prove it from your mobile device.
Wow.
Is that good or, well, it could be misused, right? Just like facial recognition.
So you go back to the basic CISSP question. Something you have, something you own, something you are. So now you have the identity, something that you have. How do you prove it? You still have to do something to prove that you are Mike Kiser that's in your digital wallet, because
right.
So we go back to the same point.
And
I'm still going to be stopped in Miami every single time I'm with a freaking red X on my face. Doesn't matter what I
did the same for me, even. And I suppose.
But it's funny. But anyway, this is a big issue, Mike. And so culture is a big deal. So because of culture, this is going to be an ongoing issue that is going to be different depending on where you are.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just incredible. But let's go back to the beginning of this story. Is your identity, that they're collecting your image with AI and everything. What is the next evolution on that, do you think, Mike?
It's a good question. I think what's going to happen more and more is that you will be tracked in public spaces.
Like that TV show, what was the name of that TV show that used to be a couple of years ago? That it was guys in New York, a very wealthy guy, and everything was tracked in New York, and they knew exactly who you were because of your face recognition. I forget the name of the show. Anyway.
But I mean, it's already happening, right? You're coming through customs, and they knew you were coming, right? Let's not kid ourselves. They know you're before you're on that plane. You're allowed to get on that plane, right? And so then now they know where you are, and how much are they going to know? A lot of cities and several cities in the US have banned surveillance cameras in public spaces outright.
Really?
Now, other cities have not. San Francisco has a ban. Austin talked about it. I think Boston has one as well. Other cities, London, for instance, cameras everywhere. So they're going to know where you are at all times, because why wouldn't they, right? Their argument is, well, we're using this for good. Mm-hmm. I mean, and even if it's not your face, you can do it with the phone.
Well, again, good is subjective to the culture. We keep going to that one, right? So
depends on, yes.
So it's interesting because it brings to mind smart cities, right? Smart cities is all about making things easier, secure, nice for you, good experience. And that includes identifying who you are.
Yes,
the way they know, right? Exactly. I don't know. This is just
and it can be a huge opportunity, right? If you're in West Africa, the odds of you necessarily having an address where you can consistently receive mail and other things is somewhat problematic. And so if you can do all of your banking or get insurance or healthcare through your mobile device that uses facial ID, again, on a secure on the device thing, but it can say, yes, this is actually Mike, that might be a real benefit that you wouldn't have otherwise, right? So the doom and gloom gets the headlines with good reason.
Always.
With good reason, right?
Yes, that I say the same.
Right. At least 3 Black men have been arrested in the United States alone and charged with crimes they were nowhere close to being around to have committed. Right? They were innocent, but they were picked up anyway. But there's also the benefit side.
So which one?
That I suppose that this is the idea. You create all this kind of stuff because it's good for the society, not because it's bad for society. That you create a facial recognition and this kind of technology, the society need better, blah, 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 blah. And you say it's for good. But at the end, and I say like you, the issues that you have to do, what's the problem and how to correct them, maybe is the work. I don't know.
And I think, okay, we all agree that everyone has the good of humanity in mind, right? No one is out just to make money. Right? Like
no, of course.
Like ultimately that's the bottom line, right?
Movement, but
can I make money doing this or not? Sure, I may be benefiting people, but I think those people are kind of rare, right? Like ultimately, am I going to get paid for doing this, or am I going to, seek truth and starve?
Well, identity is a big issue worldwide. In the States, it's a constant battle every 4 years around election time, right?
Yeah.
The election ID, the ID, you have to have the ID for vote. Well, you're marginalized. You cannot get the ID. All of a sudden now you have this technology, right? So again, it depends on how you use it. And that's exactly what you were saying, Mike. In your RSA talk, you were showing how researchers are using technology to fool this facial recognition technology. But you're doing it because you're a good guy and you want to show that, we're still a long way away from having a secure facial recognition technology. But then you go into the negative aspect. Don't you think then the bad guys are already same step that you're there farther away from you, and they're using that technology now?
Oh, certainly. And depending on what you want to define as evil or as negative, there are huge swaths of the world, right? There's, depending on what form of government you think is good or how authoritarian you want it to be or not, people with guns and power can just kind of take control in new ways, right? If they can use facial recognition to know where you are or who you are and when you are, they can enforce their system even more so.
Facial recognition and deepfakes. Do they go hand in hand now? Because that's the big thing, right?
But you say that in your presentation, you say that facial recognition, deepfake.
Yeah, they're trying. I don't think the deepfakes can quite pull it off just yet. A lot of them use a technology where if you know the markers, you can see around some of the edges and some of the eyes, and there are other markers so far that you can see that it's computer generated as opposed to natural. Yeah. There's a whole field of liveness testing that try to do that. But yeah, I mean, it's always going to be what's true and what's real. Can you trust your senses? This is like back to philosophy from way back when, right? What is truth? We don't have to go there, but yeah, I think there is a lot of negative stuff already being researched. And even if you're not doing things negatively? What if you're an organization that has a company directory and everyone's picture is in there? Now that's a whole new type of target.
Yes.
Right? Now it's not just passwords, but I want to know what everyone looks like. And now I can track your employees or whatever else, right? There's a whole other can of worms. Yeah.
But this create a question in my mind. Image will be the next target? That this question is only because you say, this is possible. But
I think that the danger cases for me right now are more people who are already targets of something bad. So people who are being stalked by someone who's out to get them, or someone, if you're a political figure, I think this is huge. Although your face is already out there, but the deep fake thing, where if I can make Ed say something idiotic and then put it online,
that's very easy.
Then it's on him to prove that it wasn't him. Right?
Imagine that. I mean, oh my God.
And by the time someone debunks it, anyone who wants to believe it is already going to have believed it, right? Yeah. So think of an opposition candidate in politics. Can you believe what the candidate for president said? Or this whatever else it is. Once you have that news cycle hit, you've already done enough damage to make it worth it. Go ahead.
I was going to say, let me show you a sample of deepfake. This is our favorite thing.
Oh gosh.
Who let the dogs out? Who let the dogs out? Who let the dogs out?
That is right, and that's a utility on our iPhone that our friend Wendy Nathan sent it to us one day. We're like,
I thought you were going to show us something fake, Ed.
Yeah.
Come on.
But again, we can do that right now for fun. But then again, Mike, you just said something that I never thought about. What if they do something like that with me saying something really stupid, and then it's on me to disprove that?
And it's dos niveles, right? At the most alto, it's like important people.
Yeah.
Not me, not you, but important people. Even a CEO of a company, right?
Yeah.
The same, but the lower level would be, just damaging someone's reputation because you want to harm them, right? And the same thing goes not just with images, but with voice.
Mm-hmm.
Now let's say, your CFO leaves you a voicemail saying, yeah, go ahead and clear that purchase order. And it's his voice because you hear it.
Yeah.
Are you going to take that as authentication? Authentication has so many issues paired with it. It's fascinating.
Yeah, again, so we go back to the question, right? One of the basic questions. What I'm hearing from this conversation then is that it's not hype. It's not marketing hype about switching from identity security to identity and privacy. As you said, it's just the natural evolution. People are waking up and understanding what all these things mean.
Yeah, I think it's both, right? The switch to identity privacy is going to be real for some, and it's going to be marketing for others. Just like any slogan you hear out in the wild, people are going to adopt. We do zero trust. What does that mean? No lo sé. Doesn't matter. We do it, right? So you have to have a deeper conversation with them to find out, are they actually doing anything? Can they prove it? And that's why sometimes, regulations and being able to document that you have done what you said you were going to do is going to be essential, both just for integrity purposes, but also for legal purposes. Did you take these safeguards to protect the privacy of the facial data you had for these people? Yes, I did, and here's my proof.
And we know that that's working right now in the travel industry, right? Especially international, right? I mean, I don't know if you saw Andy Ellis's tweets about flying to Israel, right?
Yeah.
He had to have all the paperwork ready. And so by the time he went to the counter with all the paperwork, you can no longer use the kiosks. So there goes that freaking benefit. Everyone has to be online. And you have 2 people servicing, a whole bunch of international travelers. And to show that, but it proves that you can implement those safeguards. Oh, you said that you took the COVID PCR test? Prove it. Here you go. Here's my document. It's proof that it's done, blah, 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 blah. Off you go. And then by the time they get to the next city, they go ahead and they review all those documents again to make sure that somebody didn't miss something, right? So it proved that it can happen. It can be done if people want to cooperate and understand the importance of everyone following those regulations. Here's Carlos Mauricio Blanco. One day, a student made a video of this with an image of me without authorization. But that can distort the image of a person and give it many more users, from jokes to malicious, and it's an obvious violation of identity. That last statement is huge. Violation of identity. I haven't heard that. Thank you, Carlos. That's incredible.
It's a fascinating comment too, right? Because at what level have you made that trade-off? If you are if you're a celebrity or famoso, then you've already made that trade-off, whether you want to or not. Your face is out there, right? Yes. But I think most normal people have some expectation that this is my face, this is my thumbprint, this is my
unique
whatever, right? That not everyone should have.
When a long time ago, when I started the security zone events in Cali, and I brought people, very cool guys. One of them, in those days, Twitter was just starting to come out, right? And Facebook was the big thing. And somebody asked him, what can I do to protect my identity, right? I mean, that was like 11, 12 years ago. And he said that he knows somebody that he just puts his photo everywhere, but always tags it with a different name. So when you go and you look for Andres Almanza, you get your photo, but Andres Almanza, and then another one with my photo, but it's Andres Almanza. So he went the opposite way. He's not stopping it and not controlling that my photo is not out there. I'm just going to tag every photo that I found with a different name, and good luck finding that out. I thought that was freaking incredible.
There's an even easier. Let me see if I can find it. There's even easier. It's easier. Here we go. Hold on.
Yeah, you can share. Yeah.
Yeah, let me share this real quick. This is a photo. This is an open source photo of I don't know who it is. Okay. It's some woman, right?
Yeah.
This is taken from a stock photo. Yeah. I did a different research thing on privacy for DEF CON and Black Hat a couple of years ago, where I had to create a fake identity because I wanted to test how my tool was protecting the identity. So I used this person's image, and I had a friend who called me up later on and said, "Yeah, you can't use her." And I said, "What do you mean you can't? She's fine. She's not too extreme in any direction, whatever." He's like, "No. You need to search for her on Google reverse images." And so when I did, I found out that it wasn't just one hit or 5 hits or 100 hits. But if you reverse Google image search almost anyone from open stock photos, you get about 25 billion hits. So this woman, if you looked at her and Googled her, she was a mystery novelist in Kansas. She was a political activist in the Philippines. She was a government employee in DC. She was a sex worker in Las Vegas. She was all these things, and none of them at the same time. So if you really wanted to protect yourself, what you should do is put yourself in stock photography. Yeah. Because then you are everywhere in the world and you are also nowhere.
Nowhere,
right?
Exactly.
Because if anybody searches for your image, there's a million hits.
Wow.
And they have to track them all down.
Yeah, but that's mean that it's not illegal, because I try to relate the other comment that Carlos Mauricio say that he take the picture of whatever place, and this is not illegal.
Is that illegal? Exactly.
Yeah.
But that's what Mike is saying. You know, you can go.
Yeah, but that I say
exactly.
This is not illegal. In that case, this is not illegal.
Exactly.
Right. I'm not suggesting you do that, because it could probably destroy your life.
Of course,
right?
that I say.
Like,
that
well,
I
how
say.
long have you? Yeah. How long have you done something inappropriate in Las Vegas?
Yeah.
Oh, what? I didn't know I was.
That's funny.
So, but that's if you really wanted to hide. That's probably what I would. Oddly enough, you just overexpose yourself to protect yourself.
Yeah,
so.
exactly. I mean, again, that was something that stuck to me for the past 12 years. I was like, I never thought about going the opposite direction. Mike, it's been a pleasure hosting you once again. I know we went all over the place, but this is the conversation that I like, because we touched so many things. So basically, identity and privacy, it's a real thing. It's not a marketing thing.
Totally agree.
And AI is biased. It's a new.
Totally agree too.
It's funny. It's not a new technology, but the way that it's being used right now is maturing, but it's still baby.
Yes.
If it makes sense.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Because we are. No, go ahead.
No. It's biased because we're biased. And we have to know that if anyone says they're not biased, well, they're also a liar. So better to assume you're biased and figure out what it is and try and fix it than.
Yeah. And you got to go back, you start thinking that then law enforcement should not be using this technology because it has a lot of faults. And then you go to the other one. Well, then how are you going to learn and mature this thing? Somehow, this technology is here to stay and is going to evolve.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate some people pay the price. I already get used X, and I have to wait another 30 minutes to 45 minutes immigration line to do it. But
note to self: don't travel with Ed. Just kidding.
But anyway, all right, everyone. Thank you so much. Gracias por estar con nosotros, Mike. As always, thank you so much.
Thanks.
We'll talk later. Bye-bye.
Ciao.
Ciao.